you say we are anti-Israel, you are anti-Semite, the Arab communities, the Muslim world will support you, how the Houthis are attacking, and that's why they're doing all this. They're not doing it because they care about Gaza or the Palestinians. The Houthis are doing this because they need legitimacy within their Muslim or Arab societies. And in order to be in power, in order to get legitimacy,
you have to show strength.
You have to be anti-Semite. You have to be anti-Israel. And that's why they are attacking ships in the name of helping the Palestinians or helping Gaza. But they're not helping Gaza. It's not about Gaza. It's about themselves. It's about creating legitimacy in their own country.
Joining me now is Dr. Habtom Mehari. He's a researcher on Eritrea, the Horn of Africa, and the Red Sea. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
So tell me a little bit about how the Houthis' attacks have affected global shipping routes that pass through the el-Mandeb Strait and the economy for those African countries on the Red Sea, which are very dependent on maritime trade.
They attack the ships. It's the consequence to this a Horn of African countries, mainly those in the Red Sea coast. It's significant in terms of its economy because the oil prices raising, the ships, their premium, their insurance premium is raising, and that raises the cost of the goods.
Right. It's not the actual goods that are going through the Straits and the Red Sea. It's also these ships that are stopping, as you said, they're refueling.
Exactly.
That's contributing to the economy of these countries.
Exactly. And whatever food they get, it has to be delayed because of these attacks. So one is the economy is making it difficult for these countries in terms of their economies, and that even makes the conflict more worse. And the second thing is the ecosystem of the biodiversity of the Red Sea. I mean, think of a oil spill in the Red Sea, that really affects people in the coast that survives on fishing, right? So it kills. It's gonna the Houthis, they don't care. They just can attack a ship with millions of barrels and imagine all this oil get spill over into the Red Sea, and that destroys the livelihood of these societies, those people who live in the coastal areas, right? It also makes these countries very vulnerable, and they don't want to. They have to be afraid of the Houthis. The Houthis means the Iranians, because the Houthis, they get their support, they get the army, trained, financed by the Iranians. Yeah.
So we spoke about the economic effect, but I want to talk about also the regional security for those African countries that are on the Horn of Africa, and how these Houthi attacks have affected them security-wise.
It's very interesting. In terms of security, look, in the Red Sea, which are the countries that are located in the Red Sea? This is in the eastern side. This is Saudis and the Yemeni. The Yemeni in the western side, the southern western, Eritrea, maybe Djibouti, Egypt, and in the northern Israel and Jordan, Aqaba. The Houthis, they successfully blackmail mainly because the Horn of African countries, except Eritrea, which is the only stable country in the region, because Ethiopia is in civil war, Yemen is in civil war, Sudan is in civil war, Somalia is in civil war. So these countries are already in conflict. The only country that is stable in the region is Eritrea, and Eritrea is cooperating with the Houthis and the Iranians because the Eritrean dictator believes that the Houthis and the Iranians are a resistance force, which they call against the U.S.
The Iranian resistance axis.
Yes, axis against
resistance.
Axis of resistance against the West, and also thinks the Houthis are part of that. So Eritrea, which is the only stable country in that region, is siding with the Houthis and the Iranians against the West. So the other countries, they can't deal with these issues. The only countries that are supposed to deal with these issues are Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Egypt, and they are afraid of the Houthis. The Houthis were, with the Iranian support, they successfully blackmailed these countries. So, for example, Sudan, let's just take, for example, Sudan. Sudan was part of the Abraham Accord a few years ago. Now, Sudan is falling on the Iranian hands. The Iranians are supporting the Sudanese armies led by Burhan against the...
I think that you're making a very important point here, which is completely unknown to our Western listeners. The fact that Iran is already embedded within the Horn of Africa countries.
Yes, Iran is already embedded. Although Iran is being weakened in Houthi, in Hamas, in Hezbollah, it's weakened. There in the Horn of Africa, in the Red Sea, it's getting strength. It already has the Houthis in Yemen, and now also has the Sudan.
How far back does this go?
Look, the Horn of Africa, these countries are composed of tribal clan society.
Similar to Yemen.
Similar to Yemen.
Yeah.
All of them. All of them are tribal clan societies, and they are and they couldn't create the crisis in the Horn of Africa and also in the Middle East. These countries could not create economy that provides dignified job to their citizens and also security. So they're gonna get into a conflict, and they're gonna be like look Syria, look Iraq, look Libya, look Lebanon. Right, all these countries
failing economies, no government.
Yeah, they
right.
failed. They couldn't create economy that provides dignified job to their citizens, and they have failed status. So Iran, they are very smart and they are very capable of manipulating failed status and creating non-state actors in these regions, like they created the Houthis, like they created the Hezbollah, like they created in the Hamas. They also are doing the same thing in Sudan. These countries, the decades, they've never been peaceful. They've been always like that, and they add to it the environment crisis, the climate change is even making conflict more prone. They became more prone to conflict. And population growth. These countries are growing. So this is a recipe for crisis. So these countries, there's no way they're going to be stable. So Iran is getting into this. Iran and also Turkey. The Turkey is in one. It's another issue, but
right.
The Iranians are getting into this conflict, and they're getting their power hold in this region. So in Sudan, because in Sudan the Saudis and the Emirates had the influence back then. Today the Iranians are getting, with the help of the Eritrean regime, they're getting stronghold in Sudan. The Russians also has a stronghold in Sudan, and Sudan is very close to Egypt, borderly. So they can easily blackmail Egypt. They can easily blackmail. They're just encircling Saudi Arabia.
It's creating that ring of fire
Exactly.
between Israel and the countries that it actually has peace ties with, whether it's Egypt
Exactly.
on its to the west or Jordan to the east.
Exactly.
Walk us through how Iran has essentially established these proxy groups within the Horn of Africa to create this ring of fire. How does it work?
Controlling the trade route is not something new. It's been for centuries. I mean, we've been fighting with the Persian Empire, today Iran, in the 6th, 7th century, who controlled the el-Mandeb. Think of the Silk Road. The Chinese controlled the western end of the Silk Road, and the Iranians controlled the eastern side of the Silk Road. The Chinese controlled it, and the Iranians controlled the western side of the Silk Road. It's been always controlling these important trade passing ways, right? The Bab el-Mandeb. Trump is trying to bring back the Panama. It's always been who controls this strategic trade route. And the Iranians are doing the same thing today. It's the same thing today. So they know that they have to control these trade routes. They know that they can easily manipulate these countries that are made up of tribal clan societies. So they just get into, like, for example, the Houthis in Yemen. Look how they did the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Look how they are doing in Sudan. So they have historical perspective. They know they've been in this region, and they know how to play. And look, they have 800, 600 something army forces. They can send armies. They are very, very, very historically empire, and they want to restore that empire, and they are willing to do that. So the Iranians is the same thing. Also the Iranians and the Turkish. These are the two historical powerful regional powers in this region, and the Gulf states, and they cannot compete with them. And the Horn of African countries and the Middle East countries, they are getting into conflict because they couldn't create economy.
These Houthi strikes are essentially exacerbating the situation and further pushing these unstable countries that, as you mentioned, function on a tribal clan society into the arms of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Talk to us about the opportunity here, or the opportunity that should be seized here by Israel to create collaboration with these Horn of Africa countries in order to tip the balance away from Iran and create, Sudan signed the Abraham Accords, as you mentioned, with Israel, but there's also potential for Eritrea, for Djibouti, for Somalia. Talk to us about here the potential, and in your eyes, what Israel should be doing in order to prevent the formation or the worsening of that ring of fire.
Israel needs regional alliances in this region. It cannot be isolated itself in this region to protect its security interests. Look, the Houthis, the Eilat port is not working because of the Houthis. It's just dysfunctional. It's not only the economic, but also the security. The Houthis successfully sent missiles, and it's falling in Tel Aviv. Last time, before 1 week, I had to run with my family to the shelter.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night.
4 o'clock in the morning. It's their favorite time.
Exactly, exactly. So this cannot be continued. And Israel used to have a regional alliance. The Ben-Gurion periphery strategy was to contain the Pan-Arabism, and they created a relationship with alliances with Turkey, Iran. Back then, they were the Ethiopia, and with non-Arabic minorities in this region, with the Kurds. And Israel needs to do the same thing today. But Israel has a huge opportunity in the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa because Israel has Eritrea. Which countries can Israel create relationship or alliances in the Horn of Africa?
Right. Let's go from north to south. So we're starting with Egypt. We've already got peace with them.
Yeah. With Egypt, Israel has a cold peace. The government wants peace, but right. the public, they are anti-Semite, anti-Israel, and it's very challenging. And then you go to Sudan. Sudan was already Iran is there, and there is huge possibility that Sudan will fall under the Iranians, right? And you've got the Saudis. The Saudis, they couldn't even join the international coalition led by the UK and the UK and the US against the Houthis because they are afraid, because they blackmailed them, right? And then when you go down, Djibouti is under. There is nobody. All of them are already in Djibouti. The Chinese, the Emiratis. Anybody. Somalia is in conflict. Somalia is divided into 4: Somaliland, Jubaland, Mogadishu. It is in conflict. Ethiopia is in civil war, and Ethiopia is not is landlocked. So the only country that Israel could potentially do a genuine relationship, even people-to-people relationship, is Eritrea, because the overwhelming majority in Eritrea, the Tigrinya, they have the same cultural relationship with Israel, because the Tigrinya, the overwhelming majority, because even today we are ruling in Eritrea. The Tigrinya about 10 million, 4 million in Eritrea, and 6 million in Ethiopia, in northern Ethiopia. So Israel can use the Tigrinya in the northern Ethiopia, but also the Amhara, because already the Tigrinya and the Amhara are participating in the IDF. They came as Jewish, and they're just fighting for Israel.
Right. There's the huge community of Ethiopian Jews here in Israel also.
They're already fighting with the IDF. So Israel needs to use that to leverage and to create relationship in the Western region. That's the only country that Israel could create for now.
But when you say Sudan is not an option, Sudan has technically signed as part of the Abraham Accords.
Exactly. The Sudanese government, because the military army at that time, because they needed the Americans to relieve them from the debt, and also to give them money through lending. They agreed to do, but that's the army, the military. It's not the public. Now the army is ousted. It's a conflict, and the rapid supporting forces and the army, Sudan is not going to get back into a normal country. So Sudan is lost. And the Iranians are very smart in manipulating the situation. They're already in Sudan. So the only country in that region that is stable, that does not have internal and external a
Influence.
threat that has a genuine security, economy, cultural, economic, security interests with Israel and threats with Israel. Look, the Tigrinya, the overwhelming majority in Eritrea, although we are majority in our country, we are minority in this region, like the Jewish.
Right.
So our destiny is the same with Israel.
That common experience of being a minority.
Exactly. We have also economic interests. We wanted to industrialize our costs. In order to industrialize our costs, we can't do that with the Houthi missiles on our head. So we just need to get the Houthis. It's for our interest. The peace and security of the Red Sea is first and foremost to us, to our priority more than any other countries in the region. So Israel has the Eritrea with abundant internal and external stability, a nation that is so homogeneous, and a nation that is culturally connected to Israel. Israel needs the Tigrayans in Eritrea and eastern Ethiopia and the Amhara, and it needs to create coalition, partnership with this group and protect its interests. So I see that that's the only way where Israel could create in the region and make sure that it protects its interests, but it could be also a force for good. The Iranians are manipulating these conflicts in these regions, and it's just destabilizing the whole region. But Israel could work with Eritrea and stabilize the region, and also could be a force for good. So I think Israel needs to create a strong alliance with the Eritreans, with the Tigrayans in Eritrea, the Amhara in Ethiopia. That's the only possible way for a genuine coalition for Israel.
To break that ring of fire around
Exactly.
Israel and break Iran's influence in the region.
Exactly.
It's also, economic and trade opportunities for Israel and this region of Africa that's very important. It already exists. Talk to us about the current economic trade and innovation cooperation between Israel and these African countries.
If you look back to Israel, you have technology, you have innovation, you have think of the water innovation, it's a high-tech startup country. So the African countries, they can get a lot of...
they can benefit from this innovation.
Exactly, they can benefit a lot of things from Israel, and Israel could provide a lot of things to African countries. The African people would like to see Israel's technology superiorities in water, in medicine, in agriculture. They want to use it, but the African corrupt leaders, like the Eritrean corrupt leader, they wouldn't do that because they're not interested in the prosperity of their own citizens. What they carry is about their power.
Right, power and staying in power.
Exactly, but I think Israel. Look, Africa is a young age continent. You've got in Africa the age is, I think 70% of the population is young. I mean, if you see in Europe, if you see even in China and whatever these countries, it's an aging population. But in Africa, you've got a lot of opportunities. And I think Israel, we have a economic plan in our project, so we're going to industrialize our country. And Israel could use this huge manpower. If Israel gets into Africa, for example, through Eritrea, it could use Eritrea as an entry to the African continent, and then it can also use the manpower in Africa in terms of consumption, in terms of also production. You've got huge, relatively educated, cheap labor.
You yourself are originally from Eritrea. Today you reside here in Israel for almost 20 years. Israel has a very large population of Eritreans, asylum seekers running away from war. Can you tell me a little bit about, first of all, how many Eritreans live in Israel today and what their experience is like, fleeing a war-torn country and arriving to Israel, which is, a democracy in the Middle East, but also suffers war and attacks from its neighbors.
So in Israel, there was about 40,000. Now today, I think there are about maybe 12,000 Eritreans left, because many of them are leaving to Canada and outside the country. But the experience in Israel is that although the government is asylum seekers, but the overwhelming majority of the Israeli society are very nice, and the Eritreans have really good time in Israel. I have good time in Israel. I just finished my MA and PhD in Israel. I got created family in Israel, and I see the Israeli society is very nice people. I feel like I'm in home. Like it's very close to Eritrea. It's very nice people. It gave me opportunity to pursue my education, to create family here, and I was just we've created this movement organization, and the Eritreans are the most pro-Israel. I mean, like those Eritreans who went to Canada, who was here, and they're just doing TikToks and videos. Supporting Israel. So
they're becoming ambassadors of Israel, the most unexpected ambassadors. Dr. Habtom Mehari, thank you very much for joining today and explaining, giving us light and an understanding of the situation in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea. Thank you, and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you for having me.